Jackson Rivers stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment, adjusting his silk tie as he gazed out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. At 38, he had everything most men could only dream of: a billion-dollar real estate empire, properties across 3 continents, and enough wealth to last several lifetimes. His reflection in the darkened glass showed a man in his prime, the sharp jawline, piercing green eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from never accepting defeat. The city below pulsed with its familiar energy, yellow cabs weaving through traffic like golden threads in an urban tapestry. Jackson had conquered this concrete jungle, transforming abandoned warehouses into luxury developments and turning forgotten neighborhoods into the most sought-after addresses in America. Yet tonight, despite all his success, something felt incomplete. "Are you ready?" Amanda's voice floated from behind him, sweet and melodic as always. He turned to see her emerging from the master bedroom, and his breath caught slightly. Amanda Wellington was stunning in the way that turned heads on every street corner. Her platinum blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves down her shoulders, and her emerald dress hugged her figure like it had been painted on. At 28, she possessed the kind of beauty that graced magazine covers and launched modeling careers. "You look incredible," Jackson said, meaning every word. Amanda had been in his life for 8 months now, and she never failed to impress him with her elegance and grace. Amanda beamed, her blue eyes sparkling with pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you, darling. I wanted to look perfect for tonight. This restaurant has been booked solid for months." She moved to him, straightening an already perfect collar. "I still can't believe you managed to get us a table at La Bernardine on such short notice." Jackson chuckled, slipping his arms around her waist. "Money talk, sweetheart." And when Jackson Rivers wants something, he usually gets it. It was true. The Mater D, at New York's most exclusive French restaurant, had practically fallen over himself when Jackson's assistant called. A table that would normally require a 3-month wait suddenly became available. The simple mention of his name and the promise of a generous donation to the restaurant's preferred charity, Amanda nestled against his chest for a moment. Breathing in his expensive cologne, "Sometimes I forget just how powerful you really are," she murmured. "It's like living in a fairy tale." Jackson felt a familiar warmth at her words, mixed with something he couldn't quite identify. Amanda appreciated the lifestyle he could provide, the doors he could open, the experiences he could offer. She was grateful for his success in a way that felt genuine, even if it sometimes made him wonder if she saw him or just his bank account. "Are you hungry?" he asked, stepping back to look at her. "Pierre promised me their chef has prepared something special tonight." "Starving," Amanda replied, though Jackson noticed she'd barely touched her lunch earlier. "No." She maintained her figure. With the discipline of someone who understood that beauty was currency in their world, they made their way to the private elevator that served only his penthouse. As they descended toward the parking garage, Amanda chattered excitedly about her day. She'd spent the afternoon at a spa in Soho, followed by a shopping trip to Fifth Avenue where she'd found what she described as the perfect shoes. To match her dress, Jackson listened with half his attention, the other half occupied by thoughts of the business deal he'd closed that morning, another property acquisition that would add $50 million to his portfolio. The negotiations had been brutal, lasting until nearly midnight the previous evening. He'd emerged victorious as always. His black Bentley waited in the garage, polished to a mirror shine. Jackson held the door for Amanda, admiring the graceful way she settled into the leather seats. As they pulled out into the busy street, she reached over to take his hand. "I love evenings like this," she said softly. "Just the two of us, somewhere beautiful. No business calls, no meetings, no distractions." Jackson murmured, though his phone had already buzzed twice with messages from his office.
Old habits
died hard. The empire he'd built demanded constant attention. The drive to the restaurant took them through the heart of Manhattan, past towering skyscrapers that bore Jackson's name on brass plaques in their lobbies. He owned pieces of this city, had shaped its skyline with his vision and determination. Every block held memories of deals made and obstacles overcome. Amanda squeezed his hand, drawing his attention back to her. "You seem distracted tonight." she observed. "Is everything all right?" Jackson forced himself to focus on the present moment. "Sorry, just thinking about work. You deserve my full attention." "You work so hard," Amanda said, her voice full of admiration. I don't know how you manage it all. The pressure must be incredible." "Success requires sacrifice," Jackson replied, echoing words he'd heard his father say countless times during his childhood. Nothing worthwhile comes easy. It was a philosophy that had served him well, driving him from a middle-class upbringing in Ohio to the penthouse of Manhattan's elite. He'd sacrifice sleep, relationships, and sometimes his health in pursuit of greatness. The results spoke for themselves. La Bernardine appeared ahead of them, its elegant facade glowing warmly in the evening light. Ale's rushed to take the Bentley. As Jackson and Amanda stepped out onto the sidewalk, camera flashes popped from across the street where a small group of paparazzi had gathered. Jackson was accustomed to the attention. His wealth and lifestyle made him a frequent subject of New York's gossip columns. "Mr. Rivers, welcome." The mater d' greeted them with a bow that bordered on reverent. "Your table is ready, and Chef Ripert has personally overseen tonight's menu." They were led through the restaurant's sophisticated dining room, past tables filled with the city's elite. Jackson recognized several faces: a Supreme Court justice dining with his wife, a Hollywood actor he'd met at charity events, the mayor. Deep in conversation with what looked like campaign donors, their table offered privacy while still allowing them to see and be seen. Amanda settled into her chair with practiced grace, accepting a menu from the server with a dazzling smile. Jackson took a moment to appreciate the ambiance. Soft lighting, the gentle murmur of refined conversation, the subtle scent of expensive perfume and exotic spices. "This is perfect," Amanda breathed, her eyes taking in every detail. "I feel like Cinderella at the ball." Jackson ordered champagne, a vintage Dom Perignon that cost more than most people made in a month. As they waited for it to arrive, Amanda regaled him with gossip from her social circle. She moved in different circles than he did, younger and more focused on fashion and entertainment than business and politics. "Oh, and you'll never guess what happened at the gallery opening yesterday," she continued, her eyes bright with excitement. "Apparently the Hendersons are getting divorced." She caught him with his secretary at their house in the Hamptons. Jackson made appropriate sounds of interest while scanning the restaurant. Force of habit made him catalog potential business contacts and competitors. In his world, every social gathering was also a networking opportunity. The champagne arrived with great ceremony, the server presenting the bottle for Jackson's approval before pouring 2 flutes of the golden liquid. Jackson raised his glass. Meeting Amanda's bright gaze, "2 beautiful women and perfect evenings," he said. Amanda giggled, the sound musical and carefree. "To the most amazing man I've ever met," she replied. They clinked glasses, and Jackson felt some of his earlier tension. Ease. This was good. This was what successful men did. They enjoyed the fruits of their labor with beautiful women in expensive restaurants. He'd earned this life through determination and skill. As they sipped their champagne and studied the menu, Jackson found himself relaxing for the first time in days. Amanda was right. Evenings like this were precious. Away from the pressures of business, the constant demands of his empire. He could simply be a man enjoying dinner with an attractive companion. The first course arrived, oysters arranged artfully. On beds of crushed ice, accompanied by delicate sauces that the server described in reverent tones, Amanda took photos with her phone, documenting every aspect of their evening for her social media followers. "My friends are going to be so jealous," she said, adjusting the angle for the perfect shot. "Some of them have been trying to get reservations." "Here for years," Jackson smiled indulgently. Amanda's social media presence was important to her, and her posts often featured glimpses of their life together. He didn't mind being part of her carefully curated online image. It served his purposes as well, showing the world that Jackson Rivers lived well and chose his companions accordingly. As they progressed through the meal, each course more elaborate than the last, Jackson found himself studying Amanda more closely than usual. She was undeniably beautiful, well-educated, and charming in social situations. She fit perfectly into his world. Understanding the unspoken rules and expectations that came with wealth and status, yet something nagged at him. A feeling he couldn't quite articulate. Perhaps it was the way she sometimes seemed more interested in photographing their food than eating it, or how her conversation rarely strayed from gossip and social events. He pushed the thought aside, attributing it to stress from work. The restaurant hummed around them with the quiet energy of New York's elite at play. Jackson recognized this world intimately, the careful dance of status and influence. The subtle competitions hidden behind polite smiles, the constant awareness of who was watching and what impressions were being formed. Amanda was describing a charity gala she wanted them to attend next month when Jackson's attention was caught by a commotion near the entrance. The Mater D was greeting someone with unusual enthusiasm, practically bowing as he gestured toward the dining room. Jackson's blood ran cold as he saw who had just walked in. It was Nicole. His ex-wife stood in the entrance, looking absolutely radiant in a midnight blue dress that complemented her dark hair perfectly. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence he remembered, the kind that came from inner strength rather than external validation. At 35, she was more beautiful than ever, with the kind of timeless elegance that didn't depend on youth or fashion trends. But it wasn't just Nicole's presence that sent shockwaves through Jackson's carefully controlled world. It was the man beside her, Benjamin Cross, founder and CEO of Cross Technologies, one of the most successful tech companies in America. Jackson knew him by reputation. Brilliant, innovative, and worth approximately $8 billion. Cross was younger than Jackson, maybe 33 or 34. With the kind of casual confidence that came from revolutionizing entire industries before age 30, Amanda was still talking, oblivious to the drama unfolding across the restaurant. Jackson tried to focus on her words, but his attention was completely captured by the sight of his ex-wife being seated at a prominent table with one of the most powerful men in America. Nicole looked happy, more than happy. She looked complete, in a way that made Jackson's chest tighten with unexpected emotion. She laughed at something Benjamin said, her whole face lighting up with genuine joy. It was an expression Jackson remembered from their early days together, before success and ambition had driven them apart. Jackson. Amanda's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you listening to me? He forced himself to look at her. This beautiful woman who represented everything his current life offered. Sorry, what were you saying? Amanda followed his gaze across the restaurant, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding as she spotted Nicole and Benjamin. Oh my God, she whispered. Is that your ex-wife? Jackson nodded, unable to trust his voice. In all his careful planning for this evening, he'd never imagined this possibility. New York was a big city, but the world of truly exclusive establishments was surprisingly small. She's beautiful, Amanda said, and there was something in her tone that Jackson couldn't quite identify. Not jealousy exactly, but a kind of measuring quality, as if she were comparing herself to the woman who had once shared Jackson's life. Yes, Jackson said simply, she is. The evening that had begun so perfectly was about to become far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. The silence at Jackson's table stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Amanda sat frozen, her champagne glass halfway to her lips, while Jackson struggled to process the sight before him. Nicole looked radiant, more alive than he remembered her being in the final months of their marriage. Benjamin Cross leaned close to whisper something in her ear, and her laughter carried across the restaurant like music. Should we leave? Amanda whispered, her voice uncertain for the first time since Jackson had known her. The confident socialite, who could charm anyone at a cocktail party, suddenly seemed small and vulnerable. Jackson shook his head slowly. No, we have every right to be here. But even as he spoke, he felt his carefully constructed evening crumbling around him. The oysters on his plate might as well have been cardboard. The expensive champagne tasted flat. Across the restaurant, Nicole was animated in conversation with Benjamin, her hands moving expressively as she spoke. Jackson recognized those gestures intimately. She always used her hands when she was passionate about something, whether discussing a book she loved or a cause she supported. During their marriage, he'd found it charming. Tonight it felt like a knife twisting in his chest. "Tell me about her," Amanda said quietly, setting down her glass with deliberate care. "I mean, if you want to, I know this must be difficult." Jackson dragged his attention back to the woman sitting across from him. Amanda deserved better than having him pine over another woman during their romantic dinner. "We were married for 5 years, he began, his voice carefully neutral. "Divorced 2 years ago. What happened?" The question hung between them. Jackson had practiced this answer, refined it during the months since their separation became public knowledge. The official story was mutual differences, incompatible goals, the usual corporate speak that divorce attorneys favored. But sitting here now, watching Nicole glow with happiness, the real answer felt more complicated. "I was building my empire," he said finally. "She wanted to build a life together. I thought they were the same thing." Amanda nodded thoughtfully. "Now she's with Benjamin Cross, apparently." The name left a bitter taste in Jackson's mouth. He'd researched Cross extensively over the years, the way any businessman studied his competitors. Cross Technologies had revolutionized 3 different industries before Benjamin turned 35. The man was brilliant, innovative, and according to Forbes, worth more than Jackson himself. "He's younger than you," Amanda observed, and Jackson caught the calculating look in her eyes. "By about 5 years, and richer." Jackson's jaw tightened. "Hey, money isn't everything." Amanda raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. In their world, money was almost everything. It determined where you lived, who you socialized with, what opportunities opened before you. Jackson had built his entire identity around financial success. The Martyr D approached their table, his expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Rivers, I hope everything is satisfactory this evening?" "Perfect," Jackson managed, though nothing felt further from the truth. "Excellent. I should mention that Mr. Cross specifically requested to send over a bottle of champagne to your table with his compliments." The man gestured discreetly toward where Nicole and Benjamin sat. Jackson felt heat rise in his chest. Was this some kind of power play? A way of showing that Benjamin could afford generous gestures without thinking twice about the cost? "That's very kind, but unnecessary, of course, sir." However, Mr. Cross was quite insistent. He said to tell you that he's been hoping to meet you for some time. Something about potential business opportunities. Amanda perked up at this news. "Business opportunities?" The Mater D continued. "Mr. Cross wondered if you and your companion might join them for after-dinner drinks. Nothing formal, just a chance to chat." The invitation hung in the air like a challenge. Jackson could feel Amanda's eyes on him, waiting for his response. Across the restaurant, Benjamin was watching them with the patient smile of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. "Give us a moment," Jackson said. When they were alone again, Amanda leaned forward. "This could be huge for you," she said, her voice excited. "Benjamin Cross doesn't make social overtures lightly. Everyone knows he's incredibly selective about his business partnerships." Jackson stared at his untouched entree. The thought of sitting at a table with Nicole and her new boyfriend, making polite conversation while his world tilted off its axis, felt impossible. But Amanda was right. An introduction to Benjamin Cross could open doors that Jackson had been trying to unlock for years. "Don't have to do this," Amanda said more gently, perhaps sensing his internal struggle. "We could finish dinner and leave. Pretend we never saw them." But even as she offered him an escape, Jackson could see the disappointment in her eyes. This was the kind of opportunity that defined careers, the sort of chance encounter that could change everything. Amanda understood the stakes, probably better than he did. "No," he said finally. "We'll join them." Amanda's smile was brilliant. "Really? After we finish our meal, I won't be rushed." They ate in relative silence, the food tasteless despite its undoubtedly exquisite preparation. Jackson found himself stealing glances at Nicole's table, watching the easy intimacy between her and Benjamin. They looked comfortable together in a way that spoke of more than just a few dates. This was a relationship with depth and history. Nicole caught him looking once and offered a small, polite smile. No anger or resentment, just acknowledgement. It was worse than hostility would have been. Her indifference cut deeper than any harsh words could have. When their plates were finally cleared, Amater D reappeared as if summoned by telepathy. "Shall I let Mr. Cross know you'll be joining them?" Jackson nodded, not trusting his voice. Amanda squeezed his hand under the table, a gesture meant to be reassuring, but which only reminded him of how different she was from Nicole. Amanda's touch was careful, calculated to soothe without demanding anything in return. Nicole had touched him like she meant it. Like his reactions mattered more than the gesture's effect. They crossed the restaurant's dining room slowly, Jackson acutely aware of the attention their movement drew. Several diners recognized him, and he caught whispered conversations as they passed. The business world thrived on gossip, and tomorrow, the story of Jackson Rivers dining with Benjamin Cross and his ex-wife would be circulating through Manhattan's financial district. Benjamin stood as they approached, extending a hand with genuine warmth. "Jackson Rivers. I've been hoping to meet you for years." Up close, Benjamin Cross was even more impressive than Jackson had expected. Tall and lean, with the kind of easy confidence that came from natural ability rather than artificial cultivation. His handshake was firm without being aggressive, his smile reaching his dark eyes. "The pleasure's mine," Jackson managed. "This is Amanda Wellington. Miss Wellington." Benjamin turned his attention to Amanda with the same focused intensity he'd shown Jackson. "I've heard wonderful things about your interior design work." Amanda practically glowed under the attention. "You're too kind, Mr. Cross. Benjamin, please." He gestured to Nicole, who had remained seated. "And this is Nicole Parker." Parker, she'd taken back her maiden name. Another small reminder that their shared life had been completely erased. "Hello, Jackson," Nicole said, her voice warm but careful. "It's good to see you, Nicole." He hoped his voice sounded steadier than he felt. "You look wonderful. Thank you." She turned to Amanda with genuine interest. "And you must be Amanda. Benjamin told me about your work with the Morrison Hotel project. The photos were stunning." Jackson felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy. Cole had researched Amanda, knew about her career achievements. It suggested a level of interest that went beyond casual curiosity. They settled into chairs that the staff had quickly arranged around the larger table. Benjamin ordered a bottle of wine that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, then leaned back with the satisfaction of someone who'd successfully orchestrated a complex social maneuver. "I have to admit," Benjamin said, "I've been following your company's development projects with great interest, Jackson. Your approach to urban renewal is innovative." "Thank you," Jackson replied, falling back on professional pleasantries while his personal world continued to implode around him, particularly the warehouse district transformation. It took vision. Jackson found himself drawn into shop talk. Despite his emotional turmoil, Benjamin was genuinely knowledgeable about real estate development, asking insightful questions and offering perspectives that Jackson hadn't considered. It would have been a fascinating conversation under different circumstances. Amanda and Nicole were engaged in their own discussion about design trends and sustainable architecture. Nicole had always been passionate about environmental issues, something Jackson had supported in theory but never prioritized in practice. Apparently, she'd found someone who shared her values more completely. "The reason I wanted to meet you," Benjamin continued, "is that Cross Technologies is looking to expand our physical presence. We're outgrowing our current offices, and I'm interested in something more substantial, a campus perhaps, or a series of connected buildings." Jackson's professional instincts kicked in despite his personal distress. "What kind of timeline are we talking about?" "Flexible. But I'd want something that makes a statement. Architecture that reflects innovation, sustainability, human-centered design." Benjamin's eyes lit up as he spoke, passion evident in every word. "That's exactly Nicole's area of expertise," Amanda said, apparently unable to resist inserting herself into the conversation. "Environmental architecture and sustainable design." Nicole smiled at Amanda's comment, but Jackson caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Amanda's being generous. "I mostly work on smaller residential projects these days." "Don't be modest," Benjamin said, his hand finding Nicole's on the table. "The community center you designed in Brooklyn won 3 awards last year." Jackson felt, his chest constrict at the casual intimacy of the gesture. Benjamin knew Nicole's work, supported her achievements in a way that Jackson had never quite managed during their marriage. He'd been proud of her, certainly, but always distracted by his own projects and ambitions. "That sounds fascinating," Amanda said, with what seemed like genuine interest. "I'd love to hear more about sustainable design principles." Benjamin turned back to Jackson. "The truth is, I've been looking for a development partner who understands both the business side and the human element. Too many developers focus purely on profit margins." "Profit margins keep the lights on," Jackson replied automatically. "Of course, but the best projects serve multiple purposes. They make money, sure, but they also improve communities, create spaces where people want to spend time." Benjamin glanced at Nicole with obvious affection. "Nicole taught me that buildings should enhance lives, not just house functions." The comment hit Jackson like a physical blow. During their marriage, Nicole had made similar arguments, trying to convince him to consider the social impact of his developments. He'd dismissed her concerns as idealistic, focused on the bottom line above all else. Now those same ideas were flowing from the mouth of one of the most successful entrepreneurs in America. "It's an interesting perspective," Jackson managed. "Then interesting, profitable." Benjamin leaned forward, his voice taking on the intensity of a true believer. "Developments that prioritize community well-being have higher occupancy rates, lower turnover, better long-term value retention. Good ethics turn out to be good business." Jackson found himself nodding despite his emotional turmoil. The logic was sound, even if it challenged some of his fundamental assumptions about development strategy. The evening continued with surprising civility. Benjamin was charming without being condescending, clearly brilliant, but not arrogant about it. Nicole seemed genuinely happy in a way that Jackson hadn't seen during the final years of their marriage. Amanda held her own in the conversation, though Jackson noticed she seemed slightly overwhelmed by the intellectual depth of the discussion as they prepared to leave. Benjamin handed Jackson an elegant business card. "I meant what I said about the development opportunity. If you're interested, give me a call. I think we could create something remarkable together." "I'll consider it," Jackson said, though his mind was reeling from the implications. Nicole stood as they gathered their coats, and for a moment she and Jackson faced each other directly. "It was good to see you," she said simply. "You look well." "So, do you?" The words felt inadequate. She looked more than well. She looked fulfilled in a way that made Jackson question every choice he'd made since their divorce. "Take care of yourself, Jackson." And then they were gone, swept away by Benjamin's security detail and the night's cool air. Jackson and Amanda stood alone on the restaurant steps, the city's lights blinking around them like distant stars. "That went better than expected," Amanda said carefully. Jackson nodded absently, his mind still processing everything that had happened. The business opportunity was intriguing, potentially game-changing for his company, but it meant working closely with Benjamin, which meant seeing Nicole regularly. Could he handle that? More importantly, did he want to? The ride back to Jackson's penthouse passed in tense silence. Amanda stared out the window at the passing city lights while Jackson sat rigid beside her, his mind churning with everything that had happened at dinner. The business card in his jacket pocket seemed to burn against his chest, a tangible reminder of the choice now before him. The Bentley glided through the empty streets with mechanical precision, but Jackson felt anything but calm. Every traffic light gave him more time to think, more time to analyze every word Nicole had spoken, every glance Benjamin had given him. Every moment of easy intimacy between the couple that had once seemed impossible. Amanda finally broke the silence as they entered his building's parking garage. "Are you going to take the meeting?" Jackson turned off the engine, but made no move to get out.
"I don't know."
"It could be the biggest opportunity of your career. I know. But," Jackson gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white in the dim garage lighting, but working. "With Benjamin means seeing Nicole regularly, being around them together. I'm not sure I can handle that." Amanda's voice was very quiet when she responded. "Are you still in love with her?" The question hung in the air between them like a live wire. Jackson wanted to deny it, to reassure Amanda that his feelings for Nicole were buried in the past where they belonged. But sitting here now, having seen Nicole's radiant happiness with another man, he found he couldn't lie. "Don't know," he said again, the words barely audible. Amanda nodded slowly as if she'd expected that answer. "I see." They rode the elevator to his penthouse in silence. The apartment that had seemed like a sanctuary when they'd left for dinner now felt cold and sterile. Jackson poured himself a scotch while Amanda kicked off her heels and sat heavily on the leather couch. "Tell me about your marriage," she said suddenly. Jackson paused with the glass halfway to his lips. "What do you want to know?"
Everything.
"What she was like, why you fell in love with her. What went wrong?" Jackson settled into the chair across from her, the amber liquid burning his throat as he took a long sip. Where did he even begin? How did you explain 5 years of shared dreams and growing disappointments to someone who'd only seen the aftermath? "I met Nicole at a charity fundraiser," he began slowly. "She was working for an environmental nonprofit, passionate about sustainable architecture and green building practices. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, but that wasn't what drew me to her." Amanda waited patiently for him to continue. "She was so alive," Jackson said, the memory coming back with startling clarity. "She talked about buildings the way poets talk about love. She believed that architecture could change lives, heal communities, make the world better. I'd never met anyone who saw so much possibility in everything." "She sounds wonderful," Amanda said, and there was no jealousy in her voice, just sadness. "She is." Jackson stared into his glass. "We got married after dating for 2 years. She moved into my apartment, started working on smaller residential projects while I focused on commercial development. For a while, it was perfect." "What changed?" Jackson sighed deeply. "I did. Or maybe I just became more myself. The business grew, opportunities multiplied, and I got caught up in the rush of success. I started working longer hours, traveling more, taking on bigger and more complex projects." He remembered those early years of their marriage, the slow drift that had seemed so natural at the time. Nicole would wait up for him when he came home late from meetings, eager to hear about his day and share her own projects. Gradually, those conversations became shorter, more distracted. He'd check his phone during dinner, take calls during their weekend walks. Nicole tried to be supportive, Jackson continued. She understood ambition, respected drive, also wanted partnership, someone who was present in their shared life. "I was physically there, but mentally always somewhere else, planning the next deal, the next acquisition." Amanda leaned forward, genuinely interested, despite the personal pain this conversation must be causing her. "Didn't she ever say anything?" "Of course she did. Many times." Jackson's voice grew rough with regret. "She'd asked me to slow down, to take a vacation, to spend a weekend just with her without any business interruptions. I'd promised to do better, and I meant it. But then another opportunity would come up, another crisis would demand attention, and I'd postpone our plans again." He could see it all so clearly now, the pattern that had seemed reasonable at the time but looked selfish and destructive in retrospect. Nicole's growing frustration, his defensive responses, the way they'd started living parallel lives in the same space. "The worst part," Jackson admitted, "is that she never stopped believing in me. Even when I disappointed her, even when I chose work over our relationship again and again, she kept hoping I'd remember what we were building together." "What was the final straw?" Jackson closed his eyes, the memory still painful after all this time. "Our 5th wedding anniversary. I'd planned this elaborate weekend in Paris, booked the best hotel, reservations at restaurants she'd been wanting to try. She was so excited." Amanda waited silently. "The morning we were supposed to leave, I got a call about a property deal that was falling apart, $100 million project that I'd been working on for 2 years. I told Nicole we'd have to postpone the trip just for a few days until I could fix the problems, and she said no." Jackson nodded. "She said she couldn't do it anymore, couldn't keep coming second to my business, couldn't keep hoping I'd choose her over the next deal. She said she felt like she was married to my ambition instead of to me." The fight that followed had been terrible. All the frustration and disappointment of years spilling out in harsh words and accusations. Nicole had accused him of caring more about his empire than about their life together. He'd responded by calling her selfish and unrealistic, unable to understand the pressures he faced. "I went to Paris alone," Jackson said quietly. "Spent 3 days in the most romantic city in the world conducting business meetings and telling myself that Nicole would understand eventually. When I came back, she'd moved out." Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "Do you regret it?" The admission came out before Jackson could stop himself. "Not just losing her, but the way I lost her. She deserved better than coming second to my ambition. She deserved a partner who saw her as more than just a beautiful accessory to success. And tonight, seeing her with Benjamin..." Jackson drained his scotch, the burn doing nothing to ease the ache in his chest. "Tonight I saw what she looks like. When someone puts her first, Benjamin looks at her the way I should have looked at her. He values her opinions, supports her work, makes her feel like the most important person in his world." Amanda stood up slowly, smoothing down her dress. "And that's what you want for her?" It wasn't a question. Who'd been nothing but kind to him, who'd supported his career and asked for very little in return. Amanda deserved honesty, even if it hurt them both. "Yes," he said simply. Amanda nodded, her expression sad but not surprised. "Us, Jackson. What do you want for us?" The question hung in the air between them. Jackson looked at Amanda, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in months. She was beautiful, successful, intelligent, everything a man in his position should want. She fit perfectly into his world, understood the rules and expectations that came with wealth and status. But as he sat there, he realized that he'd been making the same mistake with Amanda that he'd made with Nicole. He'd been so focused on how she complemented his image, how she enhanced his social standing, that he'd never really seen her as a complete person with her own dreams and desires. "I don't know," he admitted. "I care about you, Amanda." "Yo." "Wonderful, and any man would be lucky to have you. But I think I've been unfair to you from the beginning." "How?" "I've been looking for someone to fill the space Nicole left behind instead of building something new with you. I've been comparing you to her, measuring our relationship against what I lost instead of appreciating what we could have." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. And now, Jackson set down his empty glass and stood up, crossing to where she stood by the windows. The city stretched out below them, millions of lights representing millions of lives. Millions of dreams and disappointments and second chances. "Now I think I need to figure out who I am when I'm not running from my past," he said. "And I think you deserve someone who can give you their whole heart, not someone who's still trying to heal from old wounds." Amanda reached up and touched his cheek gently. "I knew," she said softly. "I've known for a while that part of you was still with her. I kept hoping that if I was patient enough, supportive enough, you'd eventually let me all the way in. Amanda, I'm sorry." She shook her head. "Don't be sorry for being honest. It hurts, but it's better than pretending." She picked up her purse. "From the coffee table? I think I should go home tonight. Give us both some time to think." Jackson wanted to protest, to ask her to stay, but he knew she was right. The evening had changed something fundamental between them, brought truths to the surface that couldn't be ignored. "Will you be okay?" he asked. Amanda managed a small smile. "I will be. I'm stronger than I look." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Jackson, I think you should take that meeting with Benjamin. Not because of the business opportunity, though that's important, but because running from your past isn't working. Maybe it's time to face it head on." After she left, Jackson stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by all the trappings of his success. The expensive art, the custom furniture, the view that millions of people would envy, none of it filled the hollow space in his chest. He walked to his desk and pulled out Benjamin's business card, studying the elegant design and expensive paper. Such a small thing to represent such a massive decision. Taking this meeting meant potentially working closely with Benjamin and Nicole. It meant facing his regrets and mistakes on a regular basis.